So I decided to make a little bit of a video, but with a twist. So there's a bit of an experiment with my video. I'm going to be reading some of my paper to you guys and just kind of highlighting over everything. So I hope you enjoy. The vampire, as we know it today, can be a horrifying monster, or it can be a really pretty, very sparkly, pale teenage boy. Or really anything in between. But no matter which kind you prefer, or which type of vampire you prefer, they all share one characteristic, and that is their sexuality is a main topic of discussion through history, really. As we've seen throughout history, the vampire has essentially turned into a monstrous sex symbol. Many vampires in literature and films today are so attractive to their prey that it actually makes them more dangerous than a regular monster would be, because if you see a scary monster, you're not going to go run up to it. If you see an attractive person, you're probably going to run up to it, or also get shy, but still you're going to be more interested in it. And this kind of goes into the thing of don't judge a book by its cover. So to go back to the beginning, before Dracula, we had Nosferatu, and before having an open sexuality was seen as more like widely accepted, we had Nosferatu, and he kind of blurred the lines between female and male. But in that way, that also meant that he could portray whatever abject the viewer really wanted him to see. So if you take all of the societal and political aspects of the world that was happening around him, you can kind of see that in the different interpretations of different vampire films. One thing that is similar throughout is that most of the even male appearing vampires all have feminine traits, whether that be long nails, longer hair, they're wearing dress-like robe type things, how they're doing their hair, and then we'll get to Dracula now. We see Dracula as being very elegant. He's one with nature. Both of these traits are attributed to females generally. Nature and most other things associated with life or growing in general are considered to be part of Mother Nature, which is obviously meant to be a feminine term. This is how nature has been seen in our culture. Life itself stems from Mother and the nurturer. We see examples of this in the way that Dracula moves through time and space, as well as how he sleeps, sleeping under the ground or near the ground or closer to nature. And in some depictions, he needs the land from where he was buried with him at all times, which is natural soil from where his body lies. We also see, even though he is a male, he has a sense of being able to create life, making a new vampire, as we see with Mina. We witness Dracula turn Mina into a predatory, sexual, femme fatale character. This not only goes against cultural beliefs of the time of the male being the strong character, but it plays witness to the willingness to Dracula to create something that's of his equal or even greater sexual prowess. Again, showing his female characteristics of compassion, wanting companionship, and creating something of that, and creating some type of life and relationship by essentially giving birth to a new Mina. Here, I'd also like to mention their attraction, or rather their need for blood to survive. It's not so much that they want it, they genuinely need it. And this is one of the main reasons that we see vampires as abject. We, as a society, do not drink blood generally. So that is very abject. They don't eat regularly how we humans would see that. And this kind of goes along with one of my favorite Barbara Creed quotes. It is, "Menstruation and childbirth are seen as the two events in women's lives which have placed her on the side of the abject. It is woman's fertilizable body which aligns her with nature and threatens the integrity of the patriarchal symbolic order." And that also, I would like to give the example of there's still countries and villages where when a woman is in her menstrual period, they actually banish her to a hut, and she's not allowed to be in that village when she's on her menstrual period. And a lot of people see that as, oh, they're giving her this nice hut to go to be by herself, have space, whatever. and time to rest. But a lot of people see that as banishment because of her blood being unclean, since it's kind of like cleaning out your system. Though, like vampires need to drink blood, women must menstruate. It's very crucial for reproductive systems, i.e., life. And further confirming the vampire as the object, they are able to take, or depending on how you look at it, create a new life form from another, as mentioned above. Reading off the paper. Making them, all things considered, a mother figure giving birth to their new vampire. So we see them being very feminine with even giving life regardless of their perceived gender. Females, both in horror and in life, are generally seen as the perfect embodiment of pleasure, fear, and pain. When we see women, we're normally viewing them, especially in horror films, as the sexualized version of what's actually happening. So in a horror movie, for example, if you see a girl running from a monster, or if it's a slasher film and they're running from a man with a knife, half the time we see them in a bra and underwear running for their life. And in other ones, we see a woman fighting back, but she's all of a sudden drenched in blood and sweat, and somehow that turns into like a sexual appealing thing for her. Even though we're supposed to be fearing for her life, we're also sexualizing her body and her form, just because she's a female. However, being scared during a film, we may not really notice these subconscious cues, but that's because as a society we've been so accustomed to seeing these scenes. Like, it's just part of like what we are as a society now, is just sexualizing everything, especially women. And can you imagine someone from another country or community who has different beliefs of the woman's body? So there's countries where women have to be covered head to toe besides their eyes for 24/7. And if they were to see this horror film, can you like imagine what their perception of our society would be in their eyes? Yet we wonder why horror is in general an abject to most people. Another prime example of vampires representing the abject is that of their representation in the LGBTQIA community. Vampires aren't only a sex symbol, they also stand as a representation for this community because of their ambiguity that we see throughout history. They don't specify gender, they go for male or female. We have grown accustomed to seeing the intimate exchange of their blood, or them sucking on someone's blood, to be a sexual act. We've started representing that as a sexual act even before it necessarily was meant to be. From Barbara Creed's book, she says, sucking blood from a victim's neck places the vampire and victim in an intimate relationship. Unlike other horror film monsters, the vampire enfolds the victim in an apparent or real erotic embrace. We see an example of this in Francis Ford Coppola's rendition of Bram Stoker's Dracula in 1992. This scene is where Mina is actually ingesting Dracula's blood. He's sharing it with her to become one, and we kind of see it as this giant sexualized scene where it's really portrayed as if there's oral sex being done. She's kind of like licking and sucking on his chest, and as the camera pans away, it goes to his face in pleasure, and her head kind of drifts down out of our view, which kind of makes you insinuate that something else could have been happening as well. Keeping Dracula's face of pleasure in mind from the Mina scene, we move to True Blood, which is a newer show. And in True Blood, the topic of sexuality of the vampire is very present. There's a good chunk of episodes where there's vampire orgies. There's sex in, I think, every single episode. And it's a great show. You should watch it. But they don't discriminate against gay, straight, sex, anything really in their orgies in the show. I think it's a very natural way of depicting the vampire. They're all inclusive of everyone, and it really just goes to show that maybe in the afterlife, which is what they're considered, that there isn't as much discrimination, because you shouldn't be discriminating in the first place. But aside from depicting the show having a lust for sex, it also shows their lust for blood. This hunger inside of them, they just want to feed it no matter what it is that helps it. Vampires use their power of seduction to keep the anxieties of their victims at bay, which means that if a female vampire is victimizing a female human, in quotations, of necessity, then the female vampire seduction exploits images of lesbian desire. The combination of lesbian and vampire is a happy one since both figures are represented in popular culture as sexually aggressive women. And that is from The Monstrous Feminine by Barbara Creed as well. Though I personally do not agree with lesbian women being sexually aggressive, that is typically how society sees it. So in general, this is a good observation and connection to vampirism and how they're using that to show the object. Okay, so my experiment was basically to change my appearance and keep telling you the same kind of information and see how you perceived it. So seeing if like my clothes were distracting to you, or if you listened more for some of it, or if you thought it fit more. So like when I had goth makeup on, I'm like wore all black. If you thought it suited it better because it was talking about vampirism, or if you thought it was distracting, like I said. So just an overall kind of thing to see like how you judge what you're hearing based off of what you're seeing at the same time. So I hope you guys enjoyed my little experiment. Yay, we're almost done.